All right, shifting our focus now, 47 people are dead after a devastating bomb attack near a railway station in Pakistan's restive Balochistan province. Now, this blast has been the latest in a string of deadly attacks that continue to challenge Islamabad's authority in the region. And it raises a difficult question for Pakistan's military leadership. Is Balochistan slipping further out of control? Take a look.
The devastating reality of this crisis exploded near the Quetta railway station, where a massive blast ripped through a crowd of passengers and security personnel, leaving over 45 people dead and dozens injured. The Balochistan Liberation Army claimed responsibility for the carnage, asserting that 82 Pakistani soldiers were killed in the targeted strike. This lethal operation highlights a monumental intelligence breakdown that has left the civilian population completely defenseless.
After going outside following the blast, we saw chaos everywhere. A crying mother was searching for her son, but he had already reached the hospital. On the other side, vehicles were engulfed in intense fire. Screams for help were coming from the train compartments ahead.
When I came out of the room, I saw that the house's gate was destroyed. A goat had been tied to the gate and it had fallen down due to the blast. It was a very powerful explosion. When I looked outside, there was fire and smoke everywhere.
The blast occurred while the train was travelling through Chaman Phatak station in Quetta. The train travels from Quetta to Peshawar, a route where security forces are usually stationed. It is not the first time that the BLA has targeted trains in Balochistan. Militants hijacked a train and took a number of passengers hostage while en route to Peshawar in March 2025. The explosion killed over 30 people and injured more than 100 others. There have been numerous such attacks by the BLA. For years, Islamabad treated Baloch dissent as a small law and order problem. Field Marshal Asim Munir dismissed the movement as marginal. He said about 1,500 militants could not alter the nation's course. Now, his words echo back at him. Munir is now facing fierce domestic condemnation inside Pakistan for ignoring his own burning country, for focusing his attention on courting the Trump administration instead of addressing the spiraling security vacuum at home. The roots of this unstoppable violence lie in decades of deep systemic deprivation, as the Baloch people watch the state extract immense wealth from their resource-rich land while leaving the locals in absolute poverty. To make matters worse, Islamabad continues to blindly oblige Beijing by forcing through controversial China-Pakistan economic corridor projects, which locals view as outright corporate colonization that steals their birthright. By prioritizing foreign masters and ignoring local grievances, the Pakistani establishment has pushed an entire population to the brink, leaving the state with no viable way to regain control. Bureau Report, WION. World is One.
Did Marco Rubio call his boss Donald Trump stupid? Well, this has been the biggest question that the entire world has been asking after WION questioned the United States Secretary of State in New Delhi. My colleague Siddhant Sibal asked him a simple and a legitimate question. What do you have to say about the racist comments made against India and Indians in America? Rubio's response left more to the imagination than he would have liked. Let's play that interaction for you once again.
A lot of racism, racist comments coming from the United States against Indians, Indian Americans. So this goes against the basic principles of India-US relationship. What's your take on that?
I don't know how to address that, but I'll take that very seriously about the comments. Look, I'm sure that there are people that have made comments online and other places, because every country in the world has stupid people. I'm sure there's stupid people here. There's stupid people in the United States that make dumb comments.
Now, while Rubio and the State Department were still absorbing what had happened, the State Department quietly deleted their post on X. And then the U.S. Secretary of State gave out this clarification earlier today.
Question you got yesterday on racist comments about
I don't know who he was talking about, but I assumed that he was talking about like people posting stuff online. I don't even know. Some of those could be a troll, it could be a bot. I don't know. So that's why I asked him specifically, can you tell me what you're talking about and who you're talking about? He didn't have a specific example.
Something was reposted by the president where he was talking about India being quote unquote.
Well, I gave him a chance to tell me that. That's not what he said. The president loves India. He said it last night. Were you guys there when he called in for the event last night, the 250? The president's a big fan of India, a big fan of Prime Minister Modi. I wouldn't be here if the president didn't want me to be here. He cares. He wouldn't have sent someone like Sergio to be our ambassador, someone who's very close to the president.
Now remember, Marco Rubio's comment came hours after Donald Trump, the US president, said that he loves India and he loves Narendra Modi during a phone call. Take a look.
I love India. I love India. Just want to say hello to everybody. I love the Prime Minister. Modi is great. He's my friend.
In fact, a day earlier, Rubio had invited Prime Minister Modi to the White House on behalf of President Donald Trump. Now, Marco Rubio's India visit, which is still underway, is being touted as a repair mode visit. In fact, not just repair, but also recalibrate what India and America have lost out on since the ties became strained under Trump's second presidency. Revive the Quad grouping, which many say is dead, and reinforce the India-US ties. So has Marco Rubio been able to repair or recalibrate the ties? Well, let's go one by one. Number one is trade. Trade has arguably been the most politically sensitive issue between India and America. Marco Rubio, as expected, spoke about the trade deal during his visit. India, remember, wants relief from tariffs, deeper access to the American markets, and more investment in manufacturing, especially after a recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling struck down some of Trump's tariff actions. So far, Marco Rubio has only spoken about how this trade deal would benefit the American farmers and businesses. Energy is the second most important agenda of this visit. India has unfairly been at the receiving end of Donald Trump's pressure. Even though extra tariffs for buying Russian oil have been removed, U.S. officials have signaled that Washington wants to expand its share of India's energy market, especially in oil and liquefied natural gas. This, for the U.S., leads to the wider effort of curbing sources of revenue for Russia. For India, meanwhile, the agenda is not just around where to get oil from. It's also about the price, about long-term contracts, all while ensuring that India's strategic autonomy sustains. Reviving the Quad comes in at number 3. Marco Rubio has been praising the Quad. On Tuesday morning, that's the 26th of May, India, United States, Australia and Japan will hold the Quad foreign ministers meeting. Now, this grouping began as a key platform for cooperation on maritime security, supply chains and regional strategy. But many are now asking, is it relevant in 2026? Well, for India and America, it has to stay relevant. India becomes part of a major alliance with economic powers minus China. The Indian effort to ensure an expansionist China stays in control is boosted by the Quad. For United States, on the other hand, remember, Quad serves as a deterrent against its competitor China, which continues to expand its military and economic influence in the Indo-Pacific. Rubio's presence at the Quad foreign ministers meeting will signal continued U.S. engagement, even though the grouping has not elevated itself to regular leaders summit yet. An irritant in the ties has been Trump's growing proximity with Pakistan's Asim Munir as well. Here's what Rubio said today on a question of Pakistan.
They're concerned about the things they're always concerned about, obviously. India is always pointing to the fact that there are armed terrorist groups operating from Pakistani territory that target India. They're always concerned about that. But as far as the role they played as a mediator and a facilitator in the Iran situation, it never came up. I don't think that they would complain about that. I mean, their issues with Pakistan are different.
Now, even though the United States insists that its ties with both India and Pakistan are separate, the way it deals with the two countries has largely been guided by the reported cryptocurrency and critical mineral deals catalyzed by Pakistan. Here's why I say that. Donald Trump has been much harsher with India on tariffs and energy despite good relations. But Trump went a complete 360 degrees reverse in how he dealt with Pakistan in his earlier term and how he deals with them now. So, would you call Trump's I Love India and Narendra Modi as recalibration? Would you say that the Quad meeting is a resetting of ties? Or do you think that the massive loss of trust that Indians feel with America today is testimony of the long time that it will take to recover? Well, the answer is not going to be so easy. All right, shifting our focus to India, the President of India, Draupadi Murmu, honored distinguished achievers, including celebrities from the film fraternity, at the 2026 Padma Awards ceremony. A total of 131 awardees were honored this year, including 5 Padma Vibhushan, 13 Padma Bhushan, and 113 Padma Shri recipients in what the government has described as a celebration of the people's Padma. Celebrated Indian star Dharmendra, who died in November of 2025, was honored posthumously at the ceremony. A visibly emotional Hema Malini received the Padma Bhushan on behalf of her late husband. The actor-turned-politician attended the prestigious event accompanied by her daughter, Ahana Deol. Meanwhile, in a glorious moment for Malayalam cinema, Mammootty was named a Padma Bhushan awardee. The team Padayatra celebrated the honor on the sets of the film, marking a milestone in the superstar's cinematic journey. While playback singer Alka Yagnik received the Padma Bhushan, Bengali film actor Prasenjit Chatterjee was awarded the Padma Shri. Late actor Satish Shah was honored as well posthumously with the Padma Shri for his contribution to Indian cinema. But greatness does not only belong to superstars, politicians, or global icons. It also belongs to the quiet achievers who change lives without ever making headlines. Beyond the glamour and flashbulbs was 75-year-old Anke Gowda from Karnataka. Dubbed as the Pushtak Man, Anke Gowda is a former bus conductor who turned his love for books into a moment for knowledge. He founded Pustak Mane in Karnataka's Mandya. It is now recognized as the world's largest free-access library, housing more than 2 million books across over 20 languages. Another extraordinary story was that of K. Palnivel from Puducherry. He was awarded the Padma Shri for keeping the ancient Tamil martial art of Silbam live. From a small coastal village to the national stage, Palnivel dedicated his life to preserving a tradition that is both a sport and a cultural legacy. Hezbollah's drones are piercing Israeli defenses and forcing the IDF to adapt on the battlefield. The threat has been growing, the attacks are intensifying, and Israel's soldiers in northern front are now under mounting pressure. A video released by Hezbollah showing FPV kamikaze drones hitting Israeli military positions in southern Lebanon's Rashaf. This footage shows strikes on at least 2 Merkava Mk4 tanks, armored bulldozers, heavy trucks and Humvees. Now, Hezbollah's drone warfare continues to be one of the most, if not the most serious, tactical threat facing Israel on the Lebanon front. The challenge has become so severe that Israeli soldiers deployed in southern Lebanon reportedly contacted fishermen around the Sea of Galilee, asking for fishing nets to help shield military positions from explosive drone attacks. Well, reports suggest that the move was an initiative by the troops and not part of an official IDF procurement process. The Israeli military has reportedly experimented with shade nets, football nets and fishing nets to stop the incoming drones. And Israel is not alone. Ukraine has been using repurposed fishing nets as a low-cost, low-tech defense to intercept and neutralize Russian drones, particularly first-person view and Lancet drone models. The IDF is said to be working on a standardized anti-drone protection system for buildings, for vehicles, and fortified positions. Israel has also reportedly created a specialist task force involving the military defense and civilian experts to counter the growing drone threat. Now, the urgency, remember, follows a series of major attacks over the past 1 week. An Israeli staff sergeant was killed in an explosive drone strike near the Lebanese border, while the commander of the IDF's 401st Brigade was also severely wounded in another drone attack. In total, in fact, at least 10 Israeli soldiers were injured in Hezbollah's drone strikes, while the overall, at least 22 Israeli soldiers have died since the latest fighting with Hezbollah began. The issue is also becoming political. Yonatan Shalev, who's contesting the upcoming elections with Naftali Bennett's Together party, claimed that the reports were true. He said that he had narrowly survived an explosive drone strike on the building where his unit was stationed in Lebanon. On the other hand, Hezbollah chief Naim Qasim has lauded the group's drone capabilities and rejected calls for disarmament.
Disarmament is annihilation, and we will not accept it. Disarmament means stripping Lebanon of its defensive capability and the capability of the resistance, Hezbollah, and people paving the way for annihilation.
Now, Israel says that Hezbollah's FPV drones are becoming increasingly difficult to stop because they're remotely operated through fiber optic cables, making electronic jamming extremely difficult and easier for them to dodge detection. They're susceptible to windy conditions as it can lead to cables to tangle. Unlike conventional missiles or rockets, these drones are far cheaper to produce. The estimated cost of each drone is between $300 and $500 US. In fact, some drones can also be modified and armed with RPG-style anti-tank warheads. The drones can also be made from commercially available and 3D printed components. Now, these low-cost drones can destroy high-value military targets, and they've also been used extensively in the Russia-Ukraine war. According to Israel's public broadcaster, Kan, Hezbollah's drone operations are now limiting nearly 80% of Israeli attacks in southern Lebanon. The report says that the drones have restricted troop movement and forced some Israeli operations to avoid daylight hours due to fears of drone surveillance and attacks. In fact, the broadcast also reported that anti-drone systems are being distributed to only a limited number of Israeli troops because of supply shortages. Hezbollah has also reportedly moved away from a centralized command structure, and they're increasingly relying on guerrilla-style warfare tactics, making IDF's anti-drone operations less effective.